Chat activity can be difficult to track across multiple marketing platforms. Not only does ListenLayer make it very easy to expand your chat tracking, it makes it easy to actually enhance, collect more data, and collect better data. So today I'm going to walk you through one simple use case of how ListenLayer can help you track and separate high quality chats from lower quality chats. So before you get started, make sure that your domain name is properly defined inside of ListenLayer and that you've placed the tracking script on your website. And you can check out the steps below this video if you need more information on how to do that. So today we're actually going to be focused on using HubSpot Chat. And so we're going to enable that in our test account here. I'm going to turn off another listener because it looks like I've run out of space. And once that's enabled, we're going to jump to the features screen and make sure that we have some of our chat activity enabled. So what we want to focus on today is messages from the user, messages from an agent, and when the chat starts. Now, all of the events or all the features that are going to be labeled as activity features will push at least one specific event into the data layer when that activity occurs, along with information specifically from the actions. And if you jump to event settings, you'll see now we have one event turned on for each of those features. So we are going to go ahead and publish this. And actually, before we jump to our demo website, because we know now that when chat activity occurs, we're going to get data layer activity. One thing we want to do is we want to immediately jump into this idea of chat quality. And so I'm going to turn on something called custom data layer values. And what you'll see here is it enables a new navigation item inside the listener called custom values. And this will allow me to write rules to push custom values into the data layer. And I need to make sure that I've actually defined the name of the variables in this screen. And you can see I have one here already called quality chat. So since this is defined, I'm going to jump into my custom rules and I'm going to create a new rule. Now there's two different types of rules we can create. A lookup rule is more advanced. It allows you to define multiple rules when a set of values is matched from a table, kind of a lookup table. Today, we're going to focus more on just a simple rule set that we're going to call chat quality. We can go back and add a description if you want. And what we are going to be looking for is anytime a message is sent in a HubSpot chat from a user back to our system. So anytime that event matches, and we want to look also for a specific variable. And I happen to know that this variable is called number of user messages. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, but I'll show you how I was able to determine that in just a minute here. So when this equals a value of 3, then I want my condition to be met. And so I'll save this, and then I'm going to come back and explain how we got this number of user messages. But I know that when that condition is met, I want my chat quality variable in the data layer to have a value pushed into it. So in this case, I'm just going to type the value high because this is a high quality chat. Now, it's important to note that I can actually dynamically push values from other variables into this field as well, so that my custom variables can have and house other variables. If, for example, maybe I wanted to actually include the location that the chat occurred, the actual URL, then that would be the origin plus the path name combined together. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now, going back to that condition that we were just looking at, these variables are variables that appear in my data layer. And once I have a listener turned on, it listens for activity on my website. And whenever it sees a variable from, for example, a HubSpot chat in this case, it's going to store that variable so that the listen layer system knows that to expect in the future, when a chat occurs, we are going to see these variables that are going to appear into the data layer. And what happens is those get pushed here into a screen called variable settings. So if you are in your listen layer account and you see that this screen is completely empty, it means that you actually need to publish your listener with activity features turned on and then let it run on your website for a little bit. Maybe even jump to your website and test it, make sure the data layer is being populated. And then as that data layer is being populated with events and variables, the variables will appear here. So in the past, we've run some chat tests in this account. And so we already have variable data appearing. And what we'll notice is that when data layer activity occurs, oftentimes we see this variable called message from user count. And I've actually renamed this number of user messages just to make it a little bit easier to identify. And that's how I was able to find it in my custom value rule. And in a minute here, we'll actually jump into a chat example and we'll see this variable going into the data layer. So if this is a little confusing to you at this point, it will come together and make sense when we get to that point. But essentially, because of my custom value rule set, now anytime a chat message is sent from a user and the total number of messages value in the data layer is equal to a value of 3, then we're going to define an additional variable inside of the data layer called quality chat, and we're going to push the value high into that. So let's go ahead and publish this. And then what I like to do is oftentimes just do a little hard refresh on my website. And actually, since I have the preview mode already open in Google Tag Manager, I'm actually just going to refresh my preview. And provided if I don't have any little bugs with the GTM debug tool here, then we'll see the latest information from our listen layer account. So here we're connected to the debug view. And you can see we have a chat here from HubSpot. So I'm going to go ahead and engage with this. I'm going to say hi. What we'll notice is that we have activity in the data layer automatically called HS chat started and HS chat message from user. Now, these are events that have been pushed into the data layer automatically by listen layer. You can see the information pushed in here. And if you want to see Google Tag Manager's version of the data layer as they read it, you can see that here. And any of these pieces of information can be used inside of Google Tag Manager. For example, we can target one of these pieces of information like this URL, for example, and we can actually define a variable in Google Tag Manager that will make that available. In this case, we're going to be focused on the message from user count. So remember back in listen layer when I mentioned that the listener will start to see variables appearing in the data layer and it'll populate those on this screen. Well, the reason message from user count has been populated here is because whenever you have this listener turned on and a user sends a chat in, this variable appears. And the value is currently 1. So let's go ahead and say, here is my second message. And if we can get the agent to actually respond to this as well. So now we have a response from the agent. And accordingly, we have a new message from the user being pushed into the data layer. And we have a new message from the agent. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, here is my third message. What we're going to notice now is this message from user count has reached 3. And because of our custom rule that we wrote, we now have a value here called chat custom value, colon, and then inside of here we have the quality chat variable. So inside of listen layer, whenever you create custom variables, and then you have a rule written that defines a value for that variable, whenever the conditions of that rule are met, we will automatically push that information into the data layer. And so now I can easily target this event as well as this high quality chat variable inside of Google Tag Manager to perhaps maybe trigger a specific conversion only when my chat actually reaches high quality. You see, most marketers would just simply call a chat started a conversion, for example. But maybe in this case, I know that, it's not really even going to be close to a high quality chat until the user gets to the point where they've sent us at least 3 messages. So this might, filter out maybe 30% of my chat activity that I was tracking as conversions that really don't indicate any sort of quality. And so we're going to go ahead and capture some of these into Google Tag Manager. Now what I've done is I've jumped here into the console because it can be a little easier to target these variables if we just go in here and we copy the property path to this variable, this quality chat. So I'm going to jump into Google Tag Manager. And because that is a data layer variable, I'm going to create a new variable inside of Google Tag Manager. And it's going to come from the data layer. And when you're getting a variable from the data layer, you're going to reference the variable using just a simple path structure. So think of it like a URL path, except that the forward slashes are just going to be replaced with periods. And it's more of a parent-child structure. So this is the parent element or node, and this is the child node inside of our data layer. And if you go back here, you can see chat custom values is at the top level. So there's nothing above that. And then quality chat is immediately below that. So I'm going to just call this quality chat. And so now that this variable is created, I'm going to create a trigger every time a user sends a message. And now this time I'm creating a trigger and I'm going to base it on a data layer event name. And that event name is going to be this, the message from user event. It's a little easier to see right here. HS chat message from user. So it's the event name itself. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to paste this in the event name. And I'm just going to go ahead and name it after itself. Now, this trigger, once I save it, I can assign tags to it so that the tags will fire, like conversion tags, for example, or maybe a Google Analytics event tag, would fire every time this event is pushed into the data layer. But in this case, I actually only want it to happen some of the time. And what I care about is whether this chat, this quality chat, contains the value high. Now I've limited the scope of this trigger. So now it's going to be focused on, does this event occur? And when the event occurs, does this value contain the word high? So now I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this high quality chat. And it looks like I must already have this as an example in this count. So I'm going to change the name a little bit. Yep, it looks like that was set up before. And so Now that I have this high quality chat trigger, any tag that I create, for example, let's create an example Google Ads conversion tag. We're going to call this GAds high quality chat. We're going to trigger this based on that event that I just created. And of course, when we create the conversion in Google Ads, we're going to be given things like the conversion ID, which is kind of like the pixel ID or the account ID almost, and the conversion label, which would uniquely identify this particular conversion that we want to track things to inside of Google Ads. So now I can save this, and anytime a chat activity occurs and this value is set to high and this event occurs, we will be pushing a conversion into Google Ads. Now, this doesn't necessarily preclude you from tracking other conversions. For example, you might still want to track a conversion called HS Chat Started, and then maybe see how many of those become high quality versus the overall total of the chat started. Another thing you can do, which we have another use case on, is you can send this HS Chat message from user data to a tool like GA4 along with the message count. And you can technically build a funnel to kind of understand what your drop-off rates are in your chat, focused on a function as a function of how many messages a user has sent during that chat session. So there's some really cool things that you can do with it. What we're showing you today is just a simple scenario where all I care about is setting a simple threshold where I'm going to say 3 messages from the user indicates that it's a high quality chat. And as a result of that, I want to trigger some sort of conversions into my marketing platform based on that event happening. Opening a ListenLayer account is free. You can use it free forever. If you want to upgrade for some of the premium features or need more volume, you can always jump in and check out the paid plans, which are also very affordable. So we hope you get started today and learn all the amazing things that you can do in the ListenLayer platform.